GM, and welcome back to Finality, which is the podcast at the intersection of crypto infrastructure and economics. I'm Juri Malbaum, and every week I speak with the people building, funding, and securing the next generation of decentralized networks. Our goal is to unpack the incentives, risks, and opportunities shaping the business of crypto infrastructure. This is Finality, and today I'm joined by a very good friend of mine, Douwe, who is the founder of Hyve, a decentralized data network focused on rethinking how data is stored, accessed, and monetized in Web3. And today we have a lot of things to uncover. So, for example, why crypto infrastructure might be secretly centralized, and also how Hyve can generate sustainable revenue in order to survive, so to say. With that being said, Douwe, thanks for coming on.
GM, thanks for having me, man.
The pleasure is mine, and let us get straight into the weeds. Do you think that the crypto infrastructure is secretly centralized?
In some degree, yes. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be building Hyve, right? So like what we've seen over the last decade of building decentralized infrastructure and all of these decentralized protocols is that we've made so much progress on compute, so much progress on bridging, so much progress on essentially all sectors. But if you look where data has come, then inside of the ledger, it is fully decentralized. But as soon as you're working on the intersection of off-chain and on-chain, you see that protocols just flock to AWS S3, Cloudflare R2, like all of these centralized data solutions. So yeah, your favorite decentralized protocol, big chance that it's actually running on centralized infrastructure. And I'm not even talking about the validators that are being run in cloud centers, but literally the core protocol data is being stored in centralized servers in just the native Web 2 way. And that's essentially what we're aiming to solve with Hyve, right? So we don't want to build another archival solution that stores your data very cheaply and you can access it once a year. But what we want to do is take care of that data that travels in real time, that protocols need right now to actually conduct their business, and create infrastructure for that so that we can do that in a trustless way.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point to touch base on, and specifically coming from the operator perspective, I strongly agree on this. My only question here is, why hasn't this been, in the news, in the crypto news, so to say, in the past years already? Because when we look back at the 2021, 2022 times, we were arguing about, okay, is your chain more decentralized than mine, which is the most decentralized chain? And we were, throwing numbers through the room with Nakamoto coefficients and whatever. And we ask, okay, scalability over decentralization or the other way around. And secretly, when we look at a lot of operators, they operate with, your favorite centralized server. So if we look at the roots, okay, it doesn't make a difference if you have 100 validators or 200 validators, if everything is still stored on a centralized server, right? So guide me through this. Like, what was the moment where we realized, oh, okay, like no matter how you put it, it's still centralized at its core? Like, why is
Yeah,
our case like now a thing and not, 2 years ago?
yeah, it's not in the news because it's not a very hot topic. It's not sexy to talk about data. It's a very core developer kind of thing. Us nerds care about it, but other than that, it's not something that is very punchy to talk about. But if you look in the documentation and the building patterns, then you see it coming back there. Put your data in S3 and put a hash on chain for data integrity. So the patterns are very much transparent and in the open. But yeah, nobody talks about it because it's not a very hot topic to actually talk about. But I personally noticed it essentially straight from the start when I started building in Web3. Because I come from like a development background. I always wanted to build cool stuff, and always trying to do that in like this data intensive way. And there is simply no solution where you can store vast amounts of data and actually access it for the same cost and the same speed that you can access it in the cloud. So we always notice it, and that's why we build it. But yeah, when you talk about it actually coming in the news, the same way that people talk about actually decentralizing the validator set from cloud to bare metals, that's not a philosophy or a hot topic that crypto talks about often enough. I think they definitely should. I think when you talk about decentralization, it's not just like a feature that you should have. It's an actual security model, and it extends all the way to the data layer.
Yeah, totally. I can totally resonate with that because let's be honest, if we don't basically fix the very deep root of all of the causes, then it's like kind of pointless, whatever comes on top of it. So yeah, like walk me through how you guys on a high level power this decentralization force. Like how do you want to change things with Hyve on a high level?
Yeah, let me start explaining that by how it's done currently. Like what is the model of storage currently? And that really goes all the way back to 2006 when cloud really became, a big thing. That's when storage was invented. That's when you had your S3 created, and that's essentially still the biggest object storage layer, most adopted right now. But all of that was very much centered around, the Web2 framework. So you had one company that owns the data. There's one company that interacts with the data. If another company needs to access that data, they go through an API. Since then, not only the Web3 world, but just the entire world has come forward a lot, technologically speaking. So now you have on the compute side, we have verifiable compute within the decentralized realm. We have serverless compute within the centralized realm. We have essentially pretty much free compute from all the cloud storage or the cloud providers, because it became so cheap and so distributed that it essentially became, very low cost, so essentially free. But when you look at the storage, it's still very much in the same model. You still have your storage is still tied to a single region in a single data center of one of your favorite cloud providers, while all of the computation happens completely distributed all around the world. And that's the model that people try to work around. But what we want to do with storage is, first of all, take out that entire dependency on a local region and make it global. So we want your data to be, this is a very, very well-known narrative. We want your data to be content addressed instead of region addressed. So your data exists, but nobody owns it, and it's all over the world. Nobody controls it. Everybody owns it. It's all over the world. So we want to make it global. But on top of that, we want to actually make it usable. And the way you make it usable is not by creating like a large philosophy around it that it's now decentralized, but the way you make it usable is by actually introducing the speed and the cost that they are used to in the cloud. So that means that we have to have incredibly low latency and incredibly high throughput. And the way we do that is obviously through coding. We can dive deeper into it if you want, but it's a super technical story. And then thirdly, I guess perhaps the most important part is actually advancing the features as well when it comes to storage. So right now, when you go to cloud, you control it by yourself, right? What we want to do is make this native towards multi-party usage. We want to make this native about verifiability. And we want to also turn it into an economic primitive. And what I mean by the last part is that when you look at the on-chain economy, like Uniswap got created, and then you had all these DeFi Legos also created on top of that. And that made trading go from a single marketplace to an entire economy that flourished on top of Uniswap, that integrated with Compound, that integrated with all of these DeFi protocols. With data, this is not the same. With data, you create some data, you make it accessible through an API, and you will always stay a market. What we want to do is make it composable in real time so that we can turn this into an economic primitive, so that data can flow like packets on the internet and actually become composable and usable for any protocol that wants to use it. And this is what we want to introduce to AI. We want to introduce this to RWAs, and we want to introduce this essentially to any sector that requires some level of trust between parties. And we want to eliminate that trust and make it all verifiable and composable so that you can build on other people's data and not just keep it in your own silos.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to portray picture here because obviously we all know the DeFi money Legos. For example, you buy USDC, very super straightforward example. No, you buy ETH on Uniswap, and then you, in the early days, you had MakerDAO. So you basically deposited like ETH into MakerDAO, and this is how you could retain some DAI, which was like the stablecoin back then, the biggest one next to USDC and Tether. And then you could go ahead and play around with DAI on Aave, for instance. So yeah, and then you could span it wider and wider and wider until you really hit the DeFi yield farmer pro level, so to say. So like paint me a picture. What would that mean in the data composability sector? Plus, can you talk a little bit about why it is so important to have this base neutral layer, so to say? So basically, that we get rid of data silos, but basically on a net neutral data layer, like why this is important, and maybe with an example.
Yeah, you gave me a very tangible example when it comes to the DeFi Lego, so I'll try to do the same for you. So there's a subject within crypto that's gaining popularity, which is RWAs. So all of TradFi is essentially trying to come on chain, and they're doing this through RWAs. But when you look at how these RWAs are actually structured, it's all through a calculation of NAV, so net asset value, and NAV is just provided by the RWA issuer. So it's completely untransparent. And this introduces so much data integrity problems and so much trust components that essentially
Mantra.
Huh?
Mantra.
Yeah. Yeah. Not naming names. You said it. But yeah, you essentially create such a data integrity problem and such a data transparency problem that you're just trusting the RWA issuer to provide the right value for the NAV. But all of the data for the NAV is there. It's sitting off chain. But we somehow don't have the capability to actually verify it and run our own audits and make it self-verifiable so that we can actually determine the NAV ourselves. And first of all, that means that we can more securely interact with the RWAs, whether it's chain RWAs or like these very TradFi RWAs. But secondly, what's very important is that now if you would actually have the data composable or like verifiable, self-verifiable, it becomes more composable. And you can actually build other products on top of these RWAs. Right now, RWA issuers issue it, and then they do some OTC deal with some company that wants to buy their on-chain T-bills. And that's essentially where the cycle ends. But it's not integratable with DeFi at all. It's not integratable with any kind of more interaction of CeFi, DeFi happening on-chain. It's just sitting there in silos. And I think that's not how you really grow an ecosystem out of these. That's not really how you make it all smooth and remove the hurdles of it. This is how you create essentially, again, a centralized system where it is incredibly hard to actually get into. And if we actually get these NEV values verifiable through putting their liabilities and all the assets in a verifiable data network, then you can actually make it composable and actually build all of these applications on top of it.
Yeah, I think thank you for portraying this example. I think this helps people to understand it much better. Again, like I think the DeFi money Legos is something that immediately resonates with someone. And yeah, like especially RWAs, like again, I already called out a name, but to not go into it any further. And when you saw these news, especially like last year, no, not last year, 2024, 2025, let's put it like this. You saw so many RWAs that quote unquote were on chain. And they said, oh, yeah, we just brought $500 million on chain. And it was a piece of desert in the UAE where you just put a price tag on. I can also say, okay, no, this mobile phone is worth $500,000 and I tokenize and bring it on chain, but what's actually the demand for it. So I just wanted to make this clear because I I think maybe you also agree on that, but annoys me or annoyed me about crypto in the past 2 years or something is that in the 2020, 2019, 2021 time, we tried to make finance a better place, a more transparent place. That was the pitch for blockchain. Hey, let's make it more transparent. But I think between 2023 and 2025, we came up basically with the same Fugazi things that finance is using just to, to make blockchain stay relevant. We saw wash trading, we saw RWAs Fugazis, we saw stablecoin Fugazis. So is this like also something that you saw and like, again, stress the importance of what you're building?
Sorry, I think my internet cut out for a second. But yeah, I'm back now. I agree with you on that, and I think that's also. I mean, you've been in crypto. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like around 2017, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was
2018,
later.
Yeah, 2018. Yeah.
Yeah, 2018. Same for me. A little bit earlier than that, but we come from the times where we had the ICO boom. That was not great either. But we did go into crypto because of certain mindsets around not trusting the institutions alone per se, but actually wanting verifiability and removing like all of these silos. And that's very much the mindset that I think a lot of people are still in. And that's also what makes this on-chain trading very great, because you don't need to trust anyone. You just need to trust the smart contract to execute, essentially. You just need to trust the code. But indeed, with all these RWAs coming on chain, the transparency is removed, and we're just sitting idling by and just letting it happen. And I don't think we should let crypto be taken over as some other form of just an accountancy ledger, where at the end of the day, just auditors come in from the governments and you don't know what happens behind closed doors. I think everything should be open and transparent. And if not transparent, but confidential, at least it should be verifiable. And that's what crypto runs on. And to do anything else seems illogical to me.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more on this. So yeah, I think that's really like, in order, like, once again, to stress the importance what you guys are building is, it's really like I want to bring like more examples onto the table. So one was obviously RWAs, which is like a very handy example, but also because of data composability, would it be also easier to spot wash trading? Like, we have seen this in the past 2 years, like on an incredible scale, where we saw token prices moon, and you were like, what are these guys building? Like, the token just goes up, but there's like an ecosystem that's pretty much dead. Is this also like something where Hyve could help to settle things a little bit more down to earth, or and if so, like, how precisely would that work?
Yeah, it's it's a good question. I'm not that much of a finance bro, so I don't know how much of the wash trading, how exactly that was done, and like exact like topic or examples within the ecosystem. But I think in general, this all depends on the integrations that we do. So we have a big focus right now on RWAs, because there's a very clear problem there that we are able to solve. And when it comes to wash trading, I think that depends on the trade venues that this is done on, right? So if we are building clubs on chain to essentially try to solve this, where everything becomes more transparent, then that club will need to be able to trade at the same speed that any like centralized exchange can actually trade on. And that can only be done if the order book can move at the same speed as a centralized exchange. Right now, I mean, some of them are going with DA, some of them are building their own L1, like Hyperliquid did. There's many different routes to actually go there, but at the end of the day, the bottleneck will always remain data. And that's where we aim to do it better than anyone else. And yes, it would be completely possible to build a high performance club that's as fast as Binance, or maybe even faster, completely decentralized on top of Hyve, with any kind of execution environment, whether it's an L1 or an L2. That's all going to be completely possible. And that perhaps might solve the wash trading problem in a certain degree, because all of the order books and all of the order flows will be completely in the open, and all of the market making activity and everything. But then it also comes down towards the tooling, right? All of the analytics to actually analyze all of this, to actually spot the patterns. And one thing that I want to add to there as well that I didn't touch upon yet in your previous question around like the net neutrality of it all. I think that's also something that's very important when it comes to data and when it comes to storage. In like the traditional sense of clouds, you have this concept of vendor lock-in. You just use AWS, they charge you for your egress fees and you stay locked into the ecosystem. What we want to do is actually make protocols own their data. So if you have a large protocol that adopts Hyve, then they shouldn't be paying just Hyve for the usage. What they should have is actually own the nodes that run the data infrastructure and own the verification process and actually make it part of their own data economy and their own ecosystem. So the way we want to do that is aligning our security budget model and aligning like our staking and our fee to the ecosystem itself, whether that's through their own tokens or through an ecosystem token like Ethereum. That remains up to the protocol to decide, but it's essentially going to be an entire open protocol that anyone can choose the tokenomics of as well.
Nice. Yeah, like thanks again for doubling down on this. Yeah, I mean, let's maybe go to like another topic because I think it became very clear why it is important what you guys are building. But I mean, if we also look around like these core infrastructure pieces that aim to make things better, more transparent, faster, whatever. We also, and I think that's like something that in crypto infrastructure has been tremendously overlooked in the past 2 or 3 years is, okay, at some point there needs to be some sort of fee generation, some economic case. Best example is Celestia raised, I don't know how many millions, and basically said revenue was not the most important thing. I'm coming from the Cosmos ecosystem. I'm heavily traumatized by this. People saying, we just need to scale and no revenue. And then putting the Uber example in place, where I say yes, but different thing. You had like 100 million of real people, and it already generated some revenue. So my question here is, in order for your ecosystem to power all of this, like what's basically the business model here? What kind of fee implementation is in place? Like how does it work under the hood? Where's the monetary incentive?
Yeah, very good question. And I'm actually glad that you brought up Uber as well. Because indeed, when you talk about revenue doesn't matter, I think it works phenomenally well in a retail focused business like Uber, where there's gonna be hundreds of millions of users. But it doesn't work very well if you're working in the corner of a market in a niche market. And crypto right now is still a niche market, and then rollups are in the corner of that niche market. It's not a huge amount of users when it comes to the rollups. Plus, they are trying to keep it as cheap as possible because the whole point of rollups is to make the L1 cheaper and extend the L1 through this horizontal scaling. And that's never something that we wanted to focus on. We think rollups, from a technological perspective, it's great. It should definitely exist, but it's not like a core business use case. What we want to do is focus on a much broader market that is in RWAs, that is in AI, that is in other niches such as DeepIn. There's even like some social fi that we can do, even though, I mean, well, you saw the news about Farcaster yesterday. Social seems to be going through a transition. So there's like a lot of different use cases that we can enable. And essentially what we're trying to aim for is as much storage throughput as possible. So as many protocols and as many applications actually posting their data on Hyve. And when you talk about the business model of that, if you look at, again, the clouds that we're competing with, their profit margins when it comes to storage is like 60 to 80%. We've done some modeling ourselves. For us, it's going to be essentially the same. So we can offer the same pricing as cloud does, but for such a good profit margin that, well, the nodes that are running the infrastructure will be very profitable. But it does involve indeed going into broad markets, not just niche markets. RWA is a growing market. That's something that we envision will be a big fee generator for us. But also when you talk about AI, this is going through a huge transition right now. It's going completely away from the way that SaaS businesses were built in the last 10 or 5 years. It's going into a more of a way of distributing the compute, going to regions where the compute is actually possible, where the energy is cheaper, even though that's outside of a traditional cloud data center. But the data itself stays in the data center. That is billions of dollars of egress costs every year. So they are already going distributed and global. We are distributed and global. So for AI, even though it's not per se decentralized and there's all of these trust assumptions, there's a natural use case for them to go with a product like Hyve because it moves their data closer to where the compute happens and saves them a lot of costs when it comes to egressing that data. And that's terabytes of data. That's hundreds of terabytes of data for just some data set.
Okay, so that's basically the incentive is like to verify huge data loads much quicker, much cheaper, so to say. So that's basically the elevator pitch for a project chain or whatever to work with you guys. And then like more to a like operational perspective, then will there be like a payment schedule per terabyte, or is this automatic, or how does it work?
You're getting into the weeds of it, huh?
Yeah.
It's yeah, no, it's gonna be the same as basically any other data protocol. So it's gonna be you pay for gigabytes for as long as you want to store it. So that's essentially annotated as gigabytes per month. So if you want to store something like 1 gigabyte for 1 month, you might pay like 2 cents or less. If you want to pay it or store it for 2 months, then you might pay 4 cents. So that's essentially just the business model or like the payment structure. So we just charge per gigabyte stored per month upfront as well before the TTO expires.
Makes sense. And is this all in stable coins, or because like Celestia's pitch was that everyone should pay in tier, and that's just like from an accounting perspective a nightmare.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to change as well. We don't think that we should have vendor lock-in when it comes to storage. If there's a super large protocol, let's say whatever, Polymarket. We're not working with Polymarket, but let's say Polymarket wants to use Hyve, and Polymarket has their own token, and they want their data storage and their data economy for every order book that gets queried, every new order that gets put into the prediction market order book. They want that to be paid in Polymarket tokens. Then Hyve will enable that. If they want their little piece of data throughput to be staked in Polymarket tokens, we'll do that for them as well. So in that sense, we're like completely modular in the way that we can make this possible for different ecosystems, always part of the same protocol, but all in their own little clusters. So that can be in specific ecosystem tokens, but it can also be in stable tokens. We're also exploring something with a protocol right now to do it in USDC when it comes to, well, the gas fees or the storage fees. And that would essentially, right, be up to your consideration whether you just want better tokenomics for your own project, or if you want to make it more usable for your users. It really depends on all of these factors.
Amazing. Yeah, it totally makes sense. It sounds like much more sound, much more mature, and yeah, a little bit more realistic compared to what we have seen previously, is where like data availability, people like expected everyone to pay in the native ecosystem token. Like if we talk about like real businesses, like in the real world, have fun explaining your tax advisor that you paid your bills with, I don't know, a super exotic altcoin that he has never heard of, that is not visible in his accounting tool. So yeah, also from that perspective, because how I understand you is that you want to go further than just Web3, right?
Yeah, in a sense, yeah, we very much focus, like, I mean, my roots lay in Web3. We very much focus on like the entire decentralization and working across trust boundaries. But we do think that over the next couple of years, that trust boundaries is going to extend past like our little crypto bubble and into all the other sectors. So essentially, we're not trying to expand out of Web3. We're trying to get other people into Web3 in that sense, or into the on-chain world, I should say.
I think there isn't a better way to wrap it up here. Douwe, thank you so much for coming on. Do you have like any social media links or similar that you wanna share with the people who are now eager to learn more about Hyve?
Yeah, sure. We You can follow us on Hyve XYZ on Twitter. We post blog articles essentially every day to tell more about what we're doing, as well as developer updates for all the nerds that are watching that are curious about how we built all of this stuff. And you can follow my personal Twitter as well, 0xDouwe. Maybe you should put it in text as well. It's a very difficult name. But yeah, that's it.
Amazing. You had it here first. Douwe, again, thank you so much for coming on to the show. It was a big pleasure chatting with you as always. And yeah, all the best of luck for 2026.
It was a pleasure, Yuri. Thank you so much.